Hey everybody, welcome to this Monday's Creature Feature. I'm Allan Saylor from Great Plains Nature Center. Happy to be here with you virtually on Facebook this morning. Today's topic is going to be one that I like, but it may not be for everybody. So we are talking about black widows today. And we're going to figure out how to not be afraid of spiders. Okay, we're going to work on that a little bit if we can. If you are an arachnophobe, that's okay. I would still encourage you to stay tuned. Don't run away yet. This won't be the kind of presentation that makes your skin crawl, I don't think. So we're gonna see if we can learn a little bit more about spiders. If you are an arachnophobe, by the way, that's totally understandable, right? Spiders have a lot of extra legs, a lot of extra eyes. They are a little creepy. We even have a few arachnophobes on the staff here at Great Plains Nature Center, so there's no shame in that. But we're gonna see if we can learn a little bit more about black widows, one of probably the more well-known spiders that we have in Kansas. Hey guys, come on in, have a seat anywhere. And we'll see what we can find out about them, and maybe why we don't need to be as afraid of them. All right, so have you guys ever seen one of these at your house?
I'm not sure. To be honest, we've seen no different spiders. I'm not sure if that's the one we've seen or not.
Okay, cool. Yeah, they're very distinctive. So unfortunately, we all know black widows are, the one thing we know about them is that they have a bad bite, right? They're poisonous, or they're venomous, I mean. So they that's something they're a spider to avoid, right? Them and what's the other kind that's of? Brown recluse, right? Okay, so those are like the two really venomous spiders that we watch out for in Kansas. Unfortunately, they're both really easy to recognize. Okay, they're very distinctive looking. A black widow, this is the mature female black widow. She's not really going to be mistaken for anything else, right? She's got that jet black texture. She's got that bright red hourglass right on the underside of her abdomen. Very easy to spot. Now, we actually have a few different kinds of black widows in Kansas, but they're very similar looking species. It's just kind of interesting to see there's a subtle difference between them. So you have a northern black widow that has a broken hourglass. You've got the southern black widow that has the hourglass and a red spot on the back by the spinnerets. And then you've got the western black widow. So I actually have one with me today. This is a black widow spider, a western black widow spider in here. And I'll invite you guys to come up and look at it here in just a little bit. But she's in there with 3 egg sacs. So don't worry, she's not going to come get you through the glass or anything like that. But you can come check it out in just a moment. We'll also see if we can feed her here in a little bit, see if she's hungry. All right, so now I just said black widows are super easy to recognize, but not always, right? So that is also a black widow spider. That's just what they look like when they're babies, okay? So they don't have that color until they fully grow up, and only the females are the ones that actually turn black. This is what a male looks like. So you can see they've got a whole variety of different color patterns, right? They've got whites and oranges and some blacks and browns and splotches and everything in there. So it's not always super consistent with what a black widow is going to look like, but they all do have this really large abdomen and those really long spindly legs too. You can see also how tiny these young ones are when they first hatch. When they're before they're fully grown, they're really, really small. All right, so where would you find one of these? Sheds would be a good spot. Really, a lot of human structures that we have are really good habitat for them, right? They like to hang out in places where it's cool, where it's dark. They will tend to get up in like some crevices, up towards ceilings and things like that. Crowded garages, if you have one of these, what might be that it looks like that would be some good spider habitat in there as well. And also things like wood piles that you might have outside, or stick piles, things like that, are all really, really great spots for a black widow to set up shop. So if you really don't want to have these in your house, which is understandable, right? You probably don't want to have these living anywhere near you because they are venomous. You want to keep spaces like that clean, right, as best you can. Just keep them uncluttered if that's possible. And if you're going to be kind of messing around with stuff like that, always wear gloves just to be careful, because you never know what you're going to brush your hand into. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how these spiders behave, because they are a little weird. All right, so first of all, we've got web building. When you come up to look at this spider, you're going to notice its web is very hard to see, okay? It's a good contrast with something like this. So this is called, it has a lot of different names, right? Sometimes we call it a yellow garden spider. We call it a yellow argiope, call it a zipper spider. You can see it's got that zigzag pattern right across the middle of its web. This would be an example of an orb weaver, okay? So they're a kind of spider that builds a really well-structured, well-planned out web. Okay, you can see it's got spokes, it kind of radiates out. It's really, really intricate. Okay, a black widow, their web's a little messier. Okay, they would be in a group that's called cobweb spiders. So they don't really build anything that's really, it looks like they don't really go into it with a plan beforehand, right? So it's all just kind of all over the place. If I had to build a web, it would probably look something more like this. You can see it's also, it's three-dimensional too, right? So those orb weavers, they build a web that's going to go straight out in two directions. These are more of a trap that has all different sides to it. So it's a really, yeah, it's a lot more complicated. And they tend to hang upside down on their webs as well, as opposed to sitting right on the middle of them or sitting off to the side. Sometimes they'll get down in a corner and then crawl out into the web if something gets caught in it. So, have you guys heard about the strength of spider silk before? No? Okay, that's okay. Sometimes you hear a lot that people say it's like actually stronger than steel for the weight that it has, right? And that's true. Spider silk is a really, really weird substance. Okay, it comes from that organ at the back of the spider. You can kind of see at the bottom of the hourglass there. It's got those things called spinnerets. And if you were to blow those up, if you were to look at them under a microscope, this is what they'd look like. Okay, so to me, this kind of looks like the tips of a bunch of those Elmer's glue bottles, right? That you unscrew and then you let you squeeze the glue out. This is kind of what they look like to me. And what they're doing is they are pushing through each one of these. They have many of these little spigots on each spinneret, and those will they will extrude a silk in liquid form from those spigots, and then they kind of start to solidify and weave together as they're pushed out. So all these spinnerets are moving on their own. They're moving independently. So they're really kind of weaving the silk together as we go. Just to kind of do a quick experiment with this here, I've got a couple kinds of thread here. Let's see if we can notice a difference. All right, so here, you guys, why don't you take this thread first? All right, take this. I want you to kind of wrap it around your fingers. See if you can break that thread. Okay. What do you think? Pretty easy, all right? Snap, okay? Try this one too. So same thing, wrap it around your fingers. Let me know how that goes. Takes a lot more effort, right? So they're very similar thickness, but there's a big difference between the two of them. Are you able to get it? No, yeah, it's really tough. Don't hurt your fingers, okay? But those are really tough. The second thread actually has a lot more filaments to it, okay? It has many more little strands in it, and they're also longer strands. So that makes that thread way stronger than the other one, which kind of had shorter threads and weaker, fewer filaments. So that's kind of like if you think about one of these bridge cables that holds up something like the Golden Gate Bridge, okay? If you were to cut one of those cables open, you would see thousands and thousands of steel filaments on the inside of that cable. So it's not just one thing, right? It's thousands of filaments all tied together. And that's what spider silk is like as well, except it has trillions of those little nanofibers that all weave together. That's what makes it so unbelievably strong. And the webs of black widows, are actually strong enough to catch things like mice in them. Okay, so they can actually get larger prey than just insects. All right. So the other thing that people probably know, in addition to black widows being venomous, is that they eat their mates, right? This is probably something we've heard of before. This is where they get their name, right? Black widows. That's like a lot of things in nature. That's like that they always kill their mate. That's kind of one of those things that we hear a lot, but it's not totally true, right? They certainly can, but in the wild, that doesn't happen as often. It happens a lot in captivity because the male spiders that mate with the females don't have anywhere to go, right? They're in a glass box. So yes, then they're going to get eaten. So if you're observing in that way, then you'd see it a lot more. But in the wild, they actually get away pretty regularly. The way that these they find each other is kind of interesting. So when the female spins her web, she actually laces it with pheromones. Okay, have you guys heard? Do you know what a pheromone is? It's kind of like it's like a signal, right? It's a chemical kind of perfume that attracts specifically other members of the species, right? So the other male spiders will come running to the racing to find where she's at, and then they have to be really careful when they approach. Okay, so when they actually get there, they have to make sure that once they try to climb onto the female's web, that they're not doing it in a way that makes it seem like it's a predator or something that the female wants to eat, right? So if you think about like a grasshopper would jump into the web, it would just go crash, right, and make all these vibrations, and it'd be really loud and kind of surprising, right? So the male spider has to be really careful. They actually will vibrate their abdomen to send kind of a vibration through the web to signal that, hey, you know, I'm here, what's going on? All right, we'll see what that looks like. It's really subtle. Do you see how it's moving its abdomen up and down like that? It's just very gently tapping on the web. So that's been shown to kind of, I'll play it again here. It's been shown to kind of shut down that reaction, that instinct of the female black widow to immediately aggressively go grab whatever's on the web, right? Once they hear those low vibrations, they know that it's a male who's coming to make some babies. So we also see what's really interesting with these is that they're very competitive. Okay, so a female is really looking like advertising for any males with those pheromones that are going to be in the area, right? So as soon as she builds a web, as soon as she gets those pheromones going, all sorts of different male spiders are going to come looking for it, right? It's like a race to get there first, so they can be the one that mates and reproduces. So they end up employing some kind of interesting tricks too to make sure that they're the only one that reaches the female. This is kind of an interesting thing. They will actually, once they get to the female's web and after they mate, they will end up sort of trashing that web a little bit. So you can see this is a male black widow right here. You can see he's actually going to be cutting some of the fibers of that web. And what he's doing is he's not only cutting away pieces of it, he's also balling it up and wrapping it up in his own silk. Okay, so that way he's covering up that pheromone signal that the female put up with his own pheromones. So it's kind of disguising the location of the female, right? So they end up kind of wrecking the house a little bit after they come through to try and prevent any competition from other males. So really, oh, you have a question, Lindsay?
Yes, we have a question from one of our Facebook viewers.
Oh, cool. What is it?
Cameron asks, can the female not visually recognize a male? Is the vibration the only way she can tell a male is there?
So some spiders use visual cues. It's my understanding that black widows, their vision is not great. They tend to live in very dark spaces. They don't really use or have really great visual acuity. So yeah, they're relying on those other sensations, going more by feel than anything else. That's a great question. All right. So when spiders, after they mate, the female will lay many eggs into these egg sacs. You probably have seen a lot of these, like if you go into your sheds or whatever, after a while you see a lot of these up in the corner, right? They're not necessarily all black widow eggs. A lot of spiders take this approach to it. But yeah, those egg sacs are very common. They will actually fit close to 200 eggs in each one of those little balls. So those are gonna, when those pop open, when those hatch, you're gonna get a lot of tiny little baby spiders coming out of them. Once she lays the egg in there, she wraps it up really tightly in silk. And you can see on our black widow over here, she's actually got 3 of them suspended in her web right now, just to keep those safe, to make sure that no predators are gonna get to them. It also helps kind of insulate too, right? So sometimes, in places that are colder, those egg sacs will need to survive a lot longer. They'll need to survive the cold, and sometimes the young will actually hatch and stay inside the egg sac over the winter until they can come out. So when they leave, they need to spread out, right? You can't all have, 200 to 600 spiders hanging out in the same spot. It's not going to work, right? They need to spread out. They need their own space, need to find their own habitat. The way they do that is really cool. They do something called ballooning. And this might sort of, if you are an arachnophobe, this idea might kind of trigger a little bit of fear of spiders, because the one thing that's good about spiders is that we think they can't fly. But these definitely do take to the air if they need to. Let's see here. Where's my sound at? We'll see here. Okay, so the box and touch something, okay? You feel that pop. If you rub a balloon or something like that, bring it across your hair, you can kind of feel your hair stand up. So what that is that's an electrical field, right? So you have a difference between a positive and a negative charge building up between two things. This happens a lot in the atmosphere as well, right? Like when we see lightning, you have a negative charge building up on the ground, you have a positive charge building up between water particles and clouds, and that creates a lightning strike. So they take advantage of this charge, okay, in the atmosphere. What they do is they kind of weigh themselves down to make sure that they're not blowing away, because they have to get up kind of high to do this. And then they start using their limbs a little bit like a weather station, okay? So they have really sensitive hairs that they stick up into the air to kind of feel what the wind speed is like, what the conditions are like. And then if they decide that it's gonna be time for them to fly, they will actually put some of that silk into the air. And because those individual silk strands carry a charge, instead of becoming a thread like we pulled on earlier, they'll kind of spread out like a sail. Okay, so that static charge is then going to eventually propel them up into the air. So they're putting out like basically putting up a sail made of silk, and they get carried away. A lot of spiders use ballooning as a way to get around, but these black widow babies do it as well. So they'll climb up to wherever and then start spreading. Hopefully get carried up high enough to get out of your yard into somebody else's and set up shop there. They can end up getting really high in the atmosphere as well. Like some, this is how they think that spiders manage to colonize like really distant islands, like places like the Galapagos and things like that, is by getting carried from the mainland way up into the atmosphere and then dropped off somewhere else. So it's a really fascinating way to get around, and sometimes you can actually see strands of silk flying at the right time of year. But don't be alarmed. It's okay. They're not going to get you. They're babies. So let's get to the last thing here. Like we said, widows are very venomous, right? So this is one of the main things we know about them. Let's talk a little bit about widow bites. Okay, so what makes a widow bite so dangerous? Their venom is a different kind of chemical. Okay. If you were to get bitten by a brown recluse, it's a serious bite. Okay, the symptoms are going to be very different for that, though, because the venom that a brown recluse injects is something called a cytotoxin. So that basically is damaging cells. So it's going to hurt your skin. Okay, it might even kill some skin around where it bites you. For a black widow, they have what's called a neurotoxin. Do you guys know what does the word neuro mean, or what's a neurologist do? Yeah, exactly. They look around your nerves, your nervous system, your brain, okay? So they are, when they inject a toxin, the molecules of that toxin are actually going to bind to nerve cells. So it can cause a lot of other issues, okay? It can cause fever, it can cause stomach cramps, it can cause vomiting. It's not a fun experience, right? And in very rare cases, it could potentially cause death. But for all the people who get bit by black widows every year, and there are thousands, in the last 10 years, there hasn't been a black widow death. So it's very rare that would happen, but it's possible. So you want to be careful. But yes, they have a really, really strong venom. What's also kind of interesting about that venom, though, is that it has some medical applications, okay? So since, like we said, okay, it binds to nerve cells. Oh, we got a question on the Facebook?
Yes, we do.
What is it? Okay, that's a great question. Yes, the males are venomous, the young are venomous, the eggs are even toxic as well. But fortunately, the males, which are much smaller, and the young are not going to have the fangs that are strong enough to break human skin. So really, the only one that's a threat to us is going to be mature females like this. That's a great question. Okay, the medical application of this. If you have a chemical that's really good at binding to the nervous system, okay, you could potentially use that to treat some nervous system illnesses, right? So there's a lot of, as scientists are starting to learn more about how this spider venom works, they're kind of exploring some ideas for how to use it to maybe treat things like Alzheimer's, all right? That maybe it can be a way of delivering medicine or making connections because it does such a good job of binding to those nerve cells. It's really fascinating the way it kind of just works its way in between synapses, the little connections in the nervous system. So it could be really useful. All right, and so this is a video I just wanted to show you, and this is a guy who's going to handle a black widow spider with his bare hands. Obviously, do not do that. Okay, it's a terrible idea. This is the guy from Brave Wilderness. You may have seen him before on YouTube. He's pretty wild. He tries to get himself intentionally stung or bitten or by everything under the sun. So he's a little more adventurous than any of us need to be. But he gives us an interesting picture here of how these black widows actually behave. So he's handling it. He puts it out of the glass container, and what you're going to notice is that it's not aggressive. Okay, when he puts it into his hand, its first instinct is not to bite. Okay, they're not biting in self-defense right off the bat. Its first instinct is to try and find cover. So it's trying to run away. It's trying to get away from this giant person that's handling it. You have another question?
No, it's not a question. Try unplugging the thing.
Oh.
Actually injecting
right.
venom as they would into, say, a prey item. They're not looking to kill you as a human. They're simply looking to startle you so that they can ultimately get away. And you see that? She is just tangling my arms up with web. It's almost invisible to the eye, but I can feel it all over me, tangling me up. Kind of makes me a bit nervous. I'm getting covered in spider web right now. Let me actually get her back onto the stick. Oh, that looks dangerous. I scared her there. I'm gonna get her on the stick here. I gotta get some of this webbing off of my arm. There you go. It's really sticky, and every single time that I move my arm, I can feel that web pulling her, and what I'm afraid of is that she's gonna get startled and then inflict a bite.
Okay, so the other thing he was saying in there is that they will often, as a defensive thing, do a dry bite. So that's where they might bite but not inject any venom. Okay, the reason they would do that is just to say, hey, please leave me alone. the venom they try to reserve for killing their prey, right? It's very potent, and they have a limited supply of it. So only in a really desperate situation would it actually inject the venom. He handles the spider for like 8 minutes in this video and doesn't get bitten. So it just kind of shows you that they're not really aggressive. They're not going to come get you. The only way that you are going to get bitten by one of these is if you accidentally end up in their space, right? Maybe you're reaching for something on a high shelf, accidentally brush your hand through their web, and then they're going to get you, okay? So, but in general, this isn't something to be really afraid of. It's just something to be aware of and respect, obviously, that these can be a potentially dangerous species. But if they're not in your house, if they're not in your garage, your shed, whatever, if they're just out doing their thing in a place that's not going to cause you any real trouble, they actually do help us in a lot of ways, right? Like any other spider, they're great for pest control. So they're an important part of the ecosystem. You just want to be careful. And obviously, if you do have one in your house, you're going to want to remove it, right? Especially if it's got eggs. But just do that very carefully. Get something long handled to kill it and remove it with. Be very safe. So what to do if you do get bitten? Sometimes you'll actually see, because they have these two fangs that they kind of spread apart like scissors and bite. You may, but not necessarily always, see the two pinprick holes on a black widow bite. What you want to do is obviously wash that to prevent some infection. It will swell, so applying a cold compress or a cold pack would be good. If you want, get some pain relief or topical antibiotics, because you will not be feeling great. And you do want to contact your doctor. Unfortunately, the symptoms of these black widow bites with medical help can be resolved in 24 hours. So it's not something that's going to, like a snake bite or something like that, that's going to be with you for a long time. And then obviously, if it's a child that's bitten, they're going to need more immediate medical attention, maybe a trip to the emergency room if they're really small, just because smaller bodies, aren't going to handle the venom as well, right? So it could be a potentially dangerous situation, but again, as long as you're aware of it and being careful where you're putting your hands, don't go out there and stick your hands and faces in dark holes and just digging around for stuff. It's never a good idea, right? You have no idea what could be in there, so just want to be safe. But yeah, that's all I've got on black widows. If you guys want to come up here, you can take a look at this black widow right here. I'm going to try and see if she is interested in eating a cricket. She didn't have anything for the last several days, so we'll see if she's up for some food. You can also take a look and see over the weekend, I just put her in here on Friday. Over the weekend, she's really built a very elaborate web structure inside there. It's really hard to see, isn't it? Like those threads, they catch the light really well, but if you weren't looking with a flashlight, they would look almost invisible. You can see they're going across over the top, down the sides, across the bottom. It really is like a three-dimensional structure, right? So it can catch anything that happens to wander in there. All right, let's see if she wants a cricket.
Would you like?
Do all
Oh, yeah.
spiders use that ballooning technique?
I don't know that all spiders do. I think spiders that are like wolf spiders and stuff probably don't, because they can get around easily on the ground, but
I see a lot of them on the lake.
yeah, for sure. All right, let's see here. Where's she at?
She's underneath that second sack.
We'll see how she reacts to getting something in the web there. Oh, cricket got away. Here, we'll see. All right, we'll set him down somewhere. We'll see if these...
You can see your hourglass really well there too.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see.
There she goes.
Oh, looks like she's actually drinking right there. See those? I sprayed some water in there earlier. You see those little droplets of water suspended in the web. Doesn't take a lot for a thirsty spider. Well, she may not be ready to eat quite yet, but those crickets will be crawling around and probably end up in a bad situation eventually. So, do you guys have any questions for me, or any questions about spiders in general? No? All right, cool. Well, thank you guys for coming out to the Nature Center, and yeah, enjoy your day. It's supposed to be really nice this week, so good time to get outside. Look at this one went all the way up.
Yeah. Gotta get away.
Ah. That's okay. Everything's got to eat. Were there any more questions on the live stream, Lindsay?
No, we're
All right.
good.
Cool.
Say thanks to our online viewers.
Yeah, thanks everybody on Facebook. We'll maybe be back with some more. Yeah, well, we'll definitely be back with some more virtual content eventually here. So, yeah, keep following us online and have a good one.